Buddhism teaches that peace doesn't come from adding more, but by eliminating what weighs us down. But this isn't about 20 drastic changes. It's about 20 silent liberations. You feel the weight of the world, the pressure to be more, do more. The truth is, your energy is being drained by things you don't even notice. This video reveals the 20 invisible drains that Buddhism identified over 2,500 years ago. Learn to release them, one by one, effortlessly, just with the power of your gentle attention. Prepare to sleep while listening to this video. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. Have you ever noticed how fixating on a specific outcome can make you anxious before you even begin anything? It is like putting all your energy into a future moment that may never unfold as planned. And this very habit is what we often call attachment to results, a subtle yet powerful force that shapes much of our suffering. In the simplest terms, attachment to results means clinging tightly to a particular expectation of how things should turn out, whether in work, relationships, or personal goals. This clinging creates a mental rigidity that prevents us from flowing with reality as it is, leading to a cascade of emotional turmoil. According to Buddhist teachings, suffering does not arise from the actions we take, but from our attachment to the outcomes of those actions. When we are overly attached, we experience anxiety in the anticipation phase, fearing failure or craving success, and then after the fact, we swing between frustration if things do not go our way or arrogance if they do. This roller coaster is exhausting and unnecessary, and it distracts us from the richness of the present moment. The Dharma, or Buddhist teachings, emphasize focusing on the right action in the here and now with full dedication but with a sense of detachment from the fruits of that action. This does not mean being passive or indifferent. Rather, it is about investing wholeheartedly in what you are doing without letting your happiness depend on a specific result. Think about it. When you are deeply engaged in an activity you love, like painting or playing a sport, the joy comes from the process itself, not just the final product. But when we shift our focus solely to the outcome, say selling the painting or winning the game, the pressure mounts and the fun diminishes. This is because attachment narrows our perspective, making us forget that life is inherently unpredictable and that our control over external events is limited. By holding on too tightly, we resist the natural flow of change, which Buddhism identifies as a root cause of discontent. In daily life, this might show up as stressing over a job interview, where you rehearse answers endlessly but feel crushed if you are not selected, or in relationships, where you expect certain behaviors from others and feel hurt when they do not comply. The mental energy spent on worrying about results could be better used in immersing yourself fully in the task at hand. For instance, if you are working on a project, concentrate on doing each step to the best of your ability, learning as you go, and adapting to challenges without fixating on the end goal. This approach fosters resilience and creativity because you are open to new possibilities instead of being locked into one narrow path. Many people confuse non-attachment with lack of ambition, but that is a misunderstanding. Letting go of results does not mean you stop caring about what you do. It means you care more about the quality of your effort and the lessons learned along the way. You can still set intentions and work towards goals, but you hold them lightly, like a leaf in your hand rather than a tight fist. This mindset reduces anxiety because you are not betting your entire self-worth on something outside your control. Instead, you build inner stability that is not shaken by success or failure. Practically speaking, how can we cultivate this? Start by noticing when you are getting attached to an outcome. Pay attention to the physical sensations, maybe tension in your shoulders or a racing heart, when you think about a desired result. Then, Gently remind yourself to return to the present. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation, can help train your mind to observe thoughts without getting caught up in them. In meditation, you learn to watch your breath and thoughts come and go without judgment, which is a direct practice of non-attachment. Apply this to everyday activities. When cooking, focus on the smells and textures rather than just the final dish. When conversing, listen actively without planning your response. Over time, this shifts your habit patterns. Another helpful aspect is reflecting on past experiences where things did not go as planned but turned out okay or even better in unexpected ways. Life has a way of working out when we allow it to, and often the detours lead to growth we never anticipated. By releasing the anchor of expected results, you discover a freedom that lets you innovate and adapt more easily. Creativity flourishes because you are not constrained by fear of mistakes. Instead, you see errors as part of the learning process. Relationships improve because you are not imposing expectations on others, allowing them to be themselves, which fosters genuine connection. In the broader context, Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent and interdependent, so clinging to a fixed outcome is like trying to hold water in a sieve. It is futile. Embracing this truth can be liberating. It does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process of letting go, bit by bit. You might start small, with minor tasks, and gradually apply it to bigger areas of life. Celebrate the moments when you catch yourself attaching and choose to release it. This is not about perfection, but progress. The beauty of this practice is that it brings a sense of peace and ease into your life. You begin to experience life as a dance full of movement and spontaneity, rather than a rigidly plotted course. There is a joy in the unknown, a curiosity about what each moment holds, which makes life more vibrant and less stressful. Remember, the goal is not to eliminate desires or ambitions, but to engage with them in a healthier way, where your self-esteem is not tied to external achievements. This aligns with the Buddhist path of reducing suffering by understanding the nature of attachment. As you practice, you might find that you are more productive because you are less paralyzed by fear and more open to opportunities because you are not blinded by preconceived notions. Ultimately, it is about trusting the process and trusting yourself to handle whatever comes. This trust builds confidence that is not dependent on outcomes, leading to a more fulfilling and balanced life. So, the next time you set out to do something, try to focus on the action itself, pour your heart into it, and then let go, knowing that you have done your best and that the rest is not entirely up to you. This shift can transform not only how you work, but how you live, bringing a deeper sense of contentment and freedom that is not swayed by the ever-changing circumstances of life. It is a journey worth taking, one step at a time, with patience and kindness towards yourself. By quietly eliminating the habit of attachment to results, you open the door to a more fluid, creative, and joyful existence, where each moment is valued for what it is, not just for what it might lead to. This is the essence of living mindfully, embracing the present with open hands and an open heart, building on that sense of inner freedom from focusing on the action itself rather than the outcome. We often encounter another subtle habit that can quietly erode our peace: the constant seeking of approval and validation from people around us. It is that nagging feeling when you share an idea and anxiously wait for a positive reaction, or when you choose your clothes based on what others might think rather than what you genuinely like. This need for external validation is like constructing your home on the shifting sands of other people's opinions. It might feel solid for a moment, but it is inherently unstable and leaves you perpetually insecure. When your sense of self-worth depends heavily on likes, compliments, or social acceptance, you effectively hand over your emotional well-being to forces outside your control. This habit pulls you away from your own inner voice, that quiet intuition that knows your true values and desires, and instead makes you a hostage to societal expectations and trends. In Buddhist teachings, this is seen as a major obstacle to genuine happiness because it reinforces the illusion that our worth is something granted by others rather than an inherent quality we all possess. The Buddha emphasized that true peace comes from within, from understanding and accepting yourself without the need for constant external confirmation. This does not mean you should ignore all feedback or live in isolation, but rather that you cultivate a foundation of self-acceptance that remains steady regardless of praise or criticism. Think about how often you might modify your behavior, opinions, or even life choices just to fit in or avoid disapproval. For example, you might stay in a job that others admire, but that drains you. Or you might hesitate to express a unique perspective in a group discussion for fear of being judged. These small compromises add up, creating a life that feels inauthentic and misaligned with who you really are. The energy spent on managing others' perceptions is energy diverted from pursuing what truly matters to you. Over time, this can lead to feelings of emptiness, resentment, or even identity confusion because you are living a script written by society rather than your own heart. Silently eliminating this need for external validation is not about becoming arrogant or indifferent to others. It is about reclaiming your autonomy and aligning your actions with your core values. When you stop seeking approval, your decisions become more authentic. You might start a creative project purely for the joy of it, without worrying if it will be popular, or you might set boundaries in relationships that honor your needs, even if others initially disapprove. This authenticity is paradoxically what often makes people more inspiring and trustworthy to others, because they sense a genuine presence not clouded by the need to impress. To begin reducing this habit, start with simple awareness. Notice the moments when you seek validation. Perhaps you feel a dip in mood when a social media post gets few likes, or you find yourself exaggerating achievements to earn admiration. Acknowledge these impulses without judgment. They are conditioned responses, not flaws. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool here, as it trains you to observe your thoughts and feelings without getting entangled in them. By sitting in silence and watching the mind's chatter, you learn that your worth is not tied to external events or opinions. Another practical step is to practice self-validation daily. Take a few minutes each evening to reflect on what you did that felt true to yourself, regardless of whether anyone noticed or applauded. Write it down in a journal to reinforce the habit of recognizing your own efforts and growth. Engage in activities that you enjoy solo, like hiking, reading, or crafting, to strengthen your comfort with your own company and preferences. Additionally, pay attention to your social circle. Surround yourself with people who encourage your authenticity and respect your choices, rather than those who constantly judge or demand conformity. It is also helpful to challenge the beliefs underpinning your need for validation. Often, this need stems from early experiences or cultural messages that equated being liked with being worthy. Question these assumptions. Is it really true that you need everyone's approval to be happy? What evidence do you have from your own life that you can thrive without it? Remember times when you acted according to your values despite criticism and felt proud afterward. Buddhism teaches that clinging to external validation is a form of attachment that leads to suffering, much like attachment to material things or specific outcomes. By letting go, you open yourself to a more resilient and joyful existence. This process is gradual, so be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories, like voicing an unpopular opinion in a meeting and feeling okay with the outcome, or choosing an outfit that expresses your style even if it is not trendy. As you practice, you will notice that the opinions of others lose their grip on your emotions. You will feel less anxious in social situations because you are not constantly monitoring reactions, and more confident in your decisions because they come from within. This inner stability allows you to engage with the world more freely, offering your unique contributions without the filter of seeking approval. Ultimately, quieting the need for external validation fosters a deeper connection with yourself and others, based on genuineness rather than performance. It is a journey towards self-trust that enriches every aspect of life, from personal growth to relationships, and aligns beautifully with the Buddhist path of ending suffering by understanding the nature of desire and attachment. So, as you move forward, remind yourself that your worth is inherent and unshakable, and that the most profound validation comes from living authentically in each present moment. When we begin to disentangle our self-worth from the opinions of others, we often turn our attention inward and quickly notice the endless chatter of the mind, a constant stream of thoughts, judgments, and stories. It is incredibly easy to fall into the habit of believing that this internal narrative is who we truly are, that we are our thoughts, especially the repetitive, critical, or fearful ones that dominate our mental landscape. This identification with thoughts is like mistaking the map for the territory. The map is a useful tool, but it is not the actual land itself. And in the same way, your thoughts are mental events, not your core essence. Think about a time when a negative thought arose, like "I am not good enough," and how quickly that feeling can consume your entire mood, leading to a downward spiral of anxiety or sadness. In that moment, you are not merely having a thought, you have become the thought fused with it, and your entire reality shifts based on that mental content. This fusion is what Buddhism points to as a fundamental misunderstanding, a confusion that fuels much of our suffering because we take every passing mental phenomenon as a solid, personal truth. The mind is a phenomenal tool for problem solving, planning, and creating, but it is not the entirety of who you are. When you identify with your thoughts, you effectively hand over your peace and autonomy to a random, often unruly, mental process that can generate everything from brilliant ideas to utter nonsense without much discrimination. This is particularly evident with repetitive, negative thought patterns, known as rumination, where you get stuck in loops of worry about the past or future, rehashing conversations, mistakes, or potential problems. In these states, it feels as though you are trapped in a prison of your own making, with no escape, because you believe the thoughts are real and definitive. However, through practices like mindfulness meditation, drawn from traditions such as Satipatthana, you can train yourself to observe thoughts as they arise, persist, and pass away, without grabbing onto them or getting swept away. Imagine sitting by a river and watching leaves float by on the current. Each leaf represents a thought, and you can simply notice it, acknowledge its presence, and let it continue downstream without jumping in to retrieve it. This is the essence of mindful observation. You are not trying to stop thoughts or suppress them, but rather changing your relationship to them, creating a space between the thought and the awareness that perceives it. In that space, freedom is born. You realize that you are the awareness behind the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. This shift might sound subtle, but its implications are profound. For instance, when a thought of insecurity arises, instead of automatically believing it and acting from that place, you can pause, notice it, and say, there is a thought about insecurity. And in that simple act of labeling, you create distance. This cognitive detachment is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about gaining clarity and choice. You can then decide whether to engage with the thought or let it go, rather than being hijacked by it. Practicing this regularly through meditation strengthens your ability to do this in daily life. You start to notice thoughts during conversations, while working, or when facing challenges, and you can respond more skillfully without reacting impulsively. This breaks the cycle of rumination and anxiety that so many people struggle with, because you are no longer fueling the thoughts with your identification. Instead of being a victim of your mental narrative, you become an observer with agency, capable of choosing which thoughts to entertain and which to release. The quietude that emerges from this practice is not an empty mind devoid of thoughts, but a mind at peace with its own activity, where thoughts come and go without disturbing your inner calm. To cultivate this, start with short, daily meditation sessions. Sit comfortably, focus on your breath, and when thoughts arise, gently acknowledge them and return your attention to the breathing. There is no need to judge yourself for having thoughts. It is natural. The practice is in the returning, again and again, which builds the mental muscle of awareness. Outside of meditation, you can apply this mindfulness to everyday activities. When you are washing dishes, notice the sensation of water, the sound of clinking plates, and when thoughts about your day pop up, just notice them and come back to the senses. When you are in a stressful situation, like stuck in traffic, observe the thoughts of frustration without buying into them, and you might find the stress loses its grip. Another helpful approach is to name your thoughts as they arise, such as planning thought, worrying thought, or memory thought, which objectifies them and reduces their power. Over time, this practice helps you see the impermanent nature of thoughts. They are transient events in consciousness, not permanent truths. This aligns with the Buddhist concept of anicca, or impermanence, where everything, including mental formations, is in constant flux. By recognizing this, you naturally loosen your grip on thoughts, as you see they are not solid or reliable enough to define you. The benefits extend to emotional regulation, as emotions are often triggered and sustained by thoughts. When you disidentify from the thought, the associated emotion often dissipates more quickly. For example, if you have a thought about someone offending you, and you believe it, anger flares up. But if you see it as just a thought, you might investigate it. Is it true? What is the evidence? And choose a more balanced response. This leads to better relationships, as you are less likely to project your mental stories onto others. It also enhances creativity, because when you are not attached to every thought, you can play with ideas without fear of failure, allowing innovation to flourish. In decision-making, you can access clearer intuition, as you are not clouded by compulsive thinking. It is important to note that this is not about suppressing thoughts or striving for a thoughtless state. That is another form of attachment. Rather, it is about coexistence with thoughts in a harmonious way. As you practice, you might discover a sense of spaciousness in your mind, where there is room for all experiences without being overwhelmed. This journey requires patience and kindness toward yourself. It is a gradual process of retraining habitual patterns. There will be days when identification is strong, and that is okay. Each moment of awareness is a step forward. By quietly eliminating the habit of identifying with your thoughts, you reclaim your inner freedom and open the door to a more peaceful, responsive an authentic life, where you are the master of your mind, not its servant. This natural progression from seeking external validation to understanding the internal landscape of thoughts empowers you to live more fully in the present, embracing each moment with openness and curiosity. After learning to observe our thoughts without getting tangled in them, we naturally become more aware of other patterns that drain our energy. And one of the most common is the habit of complaining and blaming others for our circumstances. It is that automatic reaction when something goes wrong. We vent about the weather, criticize our boss, or blame a family member for our bad mood. And while it might feel relieving in the moment, this habit secretly reinforces a sense of powerlessness. Every time we complain or point fingers, we are essentially giving away our agency to change the situation and cementing a victim mentality where the world is happening to us, not with us. This behavior is like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. It primarily harms our own mental state, fueling feelings of resentment, anger, and helplessness that cloud our judgment. In Buddhist teachings, this is linked to the roots of suffering, specifically aversion and ignorance, because complaining strengthens our dislike for what is and blinds us to the reality of the present moment. The alternative is not about suppressing our feelings or pretending everything is fine when it is not. It is about practicing responsible acceptance, which means acknowledging the situation as it is without judgment, and then deciding how to respond wisely from a place of clarity rather than reaction. For instance, if you are stuck in traffic, instead of complaining about the delay, you might accept that this is the current reality and use the time to listen to an audiobook or simply breathe, transforming a frustrating moment into an opportunity for calm. This shift does not make you passive. It makes you proactive because you are redirecting the energy previously spent on lamenting into actions that can actually improve your life or mindset. Complaining often becomes a social habit too, where groups bond over shared grievances. But this collective negativity can create a toxic environment that perpetuates stress and dissatisfaction. To break free, start by noticing when you are about to complain, whether out loud or in your head, and pause to ask yourself what you are truly feeling underneath the complaint. Often, it is a mask for emotions like fear, sadness, or insecurity. And by identifying those core feelings, you can address them directly instead of projecting blame externally. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool here, as it helps you observe urges to complain without acting on them, creating a gap between impulse and response. In daily life, you can set a simple intention to reduce complaining for a day, and whenever you catch yourself, gently note it and reframe the thought into a neutral or positive statement. For example, instead of saying, "My job is unbearable," you might say, "There are challenges in my work, and I can focus on what I can control." This is not about denial, but about empowerment, recognizing that while you cannot always control external events, you can always choose your attitude and actions. Another aspect is blaming, which often goes hand in hand with complaining. When we blame others, we disown our part in the situation and avoid taking responsibility for our own happiness. Buddhism teaches that blame is a form of aversion that keeps us stuck in cycles of conflict and suffering, whereas taking ownership, even when things are not entirely our fault, opens the door to learning and growth. This does not mean accepting abuse or injustice. It means responding from a place of strength rather than weakness. For instance, if a project at work fails, instead of blaming teammates, you might reflect on what you could have done differently and use that insight for future collaborations. By eliminating the habit of complaining and blaming, you reclaim your personal power and find that life becomes less about obstacles and more about opportunities for practice and development. This aligns with the Buddhist path of reducing suffering by cultivating wisdom and compassion, as you learn to meet difficulties with resilience rather than resistance. Practically, you can keep a journal to track complaints and identify triggers, then brainstorm small, actionable steps to address the root issues. Surrounding yourself with people who focus on solutions rather than problems can also support this change. Over time, you will notice that your mind becomes quieter and more focused. Your relationships improve because you are not projecting negativity onto others, and you feel more in charge of your emotional state. This journey requires patience and self-compassion, as old habits die hard. But each time you choose acceptance over complaint, you build mental muscle and inner peace. Remember, the goal is not perfection but progress, and even reducing complaining by a small amount can have a significant impact on your overall well-being. As you practice, you might discover a deeper sense of contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances, and you will find that challenges become easier to navigate with a clear, calm mind. This natural evolution from managing thoughts to transforming habits leads to a more engaged and fulfilling life, where you are the author of your experience rather than a character in a story of victimhood. By quietly letting go of complaining and blaming, you open yourself to a world of possibility and growth, grounded in the present moment and empowered to create positive change. After freeing ourselves from the draining habits of complaint and blame, we often seek comfort in the very things we believe will bring us happiness. The endless pursuit of sensory pleasures through food, entertainment, shopping, and other immediate gratifications. It is a natural human tendency to chase after what feels good in the moment, hoping that the next purchase, the next meal, or the next thrilling experience will finally bring lasting satisfaction. But this relentless quest often leaves us feeling emptier than before, caught in a cycle of desire and temporary fulfillment. This behavior is what Buddhism identifies as tanha, or craving, which is seen as a fundamental root of suffering because it creates an insatiable thirst that can never be fully quenched by external means. Imagine drinking salt water to try and quench your thirst. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. And in the same way, the more we indulge in sensory pleasures, the stronger our desires grow, leading to a constant state of want and dissatisfaction. This does not mean that pleasures are inherently bad or that we should avoid all enjoyment in life. Rather, it is about recognizing when the pursuit of pleasure becomes a compulsive habit that dominates our actions and clouds our ability to find contentment within ourselves. In modern society, we are bombarded with messages that equate happiness with accumulation and stimulation, from advertisements promising joy through new products to social media feeds showcasing idealized lifestyles, making it easy to fall into the trap of believing that more is always better. However, this external focus can lead to a neglect of our inner world, where true peace resides, and we may find ourselves on a treadmill of consumption, always reaching for the next thing without ever arriving at a sense of fulfillment. The Buddhist approach encourages cultivating santuti, or contentment, which is a deep-seated sense of sufficiency that is independent of changing circumstances or sensory inputs. This involves learning to appreciate what we have in the present moment, rather than constantly striving for what we lack, and finding joy in simplicity and mindfulness. For example, instead of seeking happiness in a new gadget, we might rediscover the pleasure of a walk in nature, a conversation with a friend, or the taste of a home-cooked meal, all without the need for excessive stimulation. Practicing mindfulness meditation can help us become more aware of our cravings as they arise, allowing us to observe them without automatically acting on them, and thus reducing their power over our decisions. When we sit in meditation and notice the urge to check our phone for entertainment or to plan our next indulgence, we can gently acknowledge the impulse and return to our breath, training the mind to find calm without external crutches. Over time, this practice helps us distinguish between genuine needs and conditioned wants, enabling us to make more conscious choices about how we engage with the world of senses. Another practical step is to intentionally reduce exposure to stimuli that fuel desire, such as limiting time on social media, unsubscribing from promotional emails, or creating tech-free zones in our homes, which can help quiet the mind and reduce the constant pull toward consumption. We can also practice gratitude daily by reflecting on the simple blessings in our lives, such as health, relationships, or moments of peace, which shifts our focus from what is missing to what is already present. This shift in perspective does not require renouncing all pleasures, but rather engaging with them in a more balanced and mindful way, where we enjoy experiences without becoming attached to them or depending on them for our happiness. For instance, we can savor a piece of chocolate fully, noticing its texture and flavor, without feeling the need to eat the whole box. Or we can enjoy a movie without binge-watching an entire series out of habit. By doing so, we break the cycle of craving and gratification that keeps us trapped in dissatisfaction and open ourselves to more profound sources of joy, such as creativity, connection, and personal growth. The benefits of quieting this pursuit are immense. We experience less anxiety and stress because we are not constantly chasing the next high, and we develop a resilience that allows us to handle life's ups and downs with greater ease. Our relationships improve as we become more present with others, rather than distracted by the lure of devices or entertainment, and we may find that we have more energy and resources to contribute to meaningful activities. Moreover, this practice aligns with the Buddhist understanding of impermanence, as all sensory pleasures are fleeting, and basing our happiness on them sets us up for inevitable disappointment when they change or end. By cultivating inner contentment, we build a foundation of well-being that remains stable regardless of external conditions, much like a deep-rooted tree that withstands storms without breaking. It is important to approach this process with kindness and patience, as habits of seeking pleasure are often deeply ingrained and may have developed as coping mechanisms for stress or emotional pain. Instead of judging ourselves for having desires, we can meet them with curiosity and compassion, exploring the underlying needs they represent, such as a desire for comfort, connection, or validation, and finding healthier ways to address those needs. For example, if we find ourselves turning to food for comfort, we might explore other self-soothing practices like gentle movement, journaling, or talking to a loved one. As we gradually reduce our reliance on sensory pleasures, we discover a richness in everyday moments that we previously overlooked, and we may feel a sense of freedom from the constant pressure to acquire and consume. This journey is not about achieving perfection, but about making incremental changes that support a more mindful and fulfilling life, where we are driven less by impulse and more by intention. By quietly eliminating the habit of tirelessly chasing sensory pleasures, we create space for deeper, more enduring forms of happiness to emerge, and we learn to live with a lightness and appreciation for the present that transforms our experience of the world. This natural progression from managing external dependencies to nurturing inner peace empowers us to engage with life more fully, without being enslaved by desires, and to find joy in the simple, ordinary moments that make up the fabric of our lives. As we shift from seeking happiness in external pleasures to finding a more stable contentment within, we naturally begin to question the very entity we believe is having these experiences, the sense of a solid, separate, and permanent self that seems to be running the show. It feels intuitive to think of ourselves as a consistent I that exists independently from others, with a fixed personality, memories, and desires that define who we are. But this perception is what Buddhism identifies as a fundamental illusion, known as anatta or no self. This does not mean that we do not exist at all, but rather that the way we typically conceive of ourselves as a singular, unchanging entity is a mental construct that does not align with reality. When we look closely at our experience, we see that everything about us is in constant flux. Our bodies change with every breath and meal. Our thoughts and emotions arise and pass away like weather patterns. And even our memories are reconstructed each time we recall them. There is no single, static thing we can point to and say, "This is me," in a permanent way. Instead, what we call the self is a flowing, interdependent process made up of ever-changing physical and mental components. This idea can be unsettling at first because our identity feels so real and central to our existence. But clinging to it as solid and separate is what generates much of our suffering, such as fear of loss, ego-driven conflicts, and a sense of isolation from others. For example, when we feel insulted, it is because we are protecting this idea of a fixed self that has been attacked. Or when we hoard resources, it is out of a belief that this self needs to be fortified against others. In daily life, this illusion manifests as taking things personally, feeling that successes and failures define who we are, or in the stress of maintaining a certain image to uphold this sense of self. The Buddhist practice involves investigating this through mindfulness and meditation to directly perceive the lack of a permanent core. You can start by sitting quietly and observing the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, and the feelings that arise, noticing how they all come and go without any one thing being a stable owner of the experience. When a thought arises, ask, "Who is thinking this?" And you will see that there is no thinker behind it, just the thought itself appearing in awareness. Similarly, when an emotion like anger flares up, observe it as a temporary energy in the body rather than something that belongs to a solid self. This practice helps loosen the identification with these phenomena, reducing the tendency to say, "I am angry," and instead noting, "There is anger arising." Over time, this shifts your experience from being a rigid self navigating the world to being a more fluid awareness that participates in life without so much attachment. The concept of interdependence is key here. Nothing exists in isolation, including us. Our bodies depend on food, water, and air from the environment. Our minds are shaped by cultural influences, relationships, and past experiences, and our very sense of self is co-created through interactions with others. For instance, you might act differently with family versus co-workers, showing that there is no single you but various expressions depending on context. Recognizing this interconnectedness naturally fosters compassion, because when the boundary between self and other softens, the suffering of others feels more immediate and shared, much like how you might feel pain in your own hand. This does not mean losing your individuality or becoming passive. Rather, it allows you to engage with life more authentically, without the burden of defending a fragile ego. Practical ways to cultivate this understanding include daily mindfulness exercises where you bring attention to the changing nature of experiences, such as watching how a pleasant sensation fades or how a mood shifts without your control. In conversations, practice listening without the filter of how it affects your self-image, and you might find responses becoming more empathetic and less defensive. When making decisions, reflect on whether they are driven by a need to protect the self or from a place of genuine care for the whole situation. As you do this, you may notice a reduction in anxiety about the future or regret about the past, because without a solid self to protect, there is less to lose or gain. The benefits extend to relationships, as you become less likely to take things personally and more open to understanding others' perspectives, leading to deeper connections and reduced conflict. In work or creative pursuits, this fluidity can enhance innovation because you are not stuck in a fixed identity that fears failure or craves approval. It is important to approach this exploration with kindness and patience, as the habit of identifying with the self is deeply ingrained and may have provided a sense of security. There is no need to force insights. Simply observe with curiosity, and understanding will grow naturally. You might also reflect on moments of flow, like when you are absorbed in an activity and forget yourself entirely, which hints at the possibility of living without the constant reference to I. By quietly eliminating the habit of clinging to a permanent self, You open the door to a more graceful and less burdensome way of being, where life is experienced as a dynamic dance rather than a solitary struggle. This does not eliminate challenges, but it changes how you relate to them, making them feel less personal and more part of the universal human experience. Over time, this can lead to a profound sense of freedom and peace, as you no longer need to manage and defend an illusion, and instead, you can rest in the awareness that holds all experiences. This journey from external pursuits to inner inquiry ultimately empowers you to live with greater flexibility, resilience, and joy, embracing each moment as it is, without the filter of a separate self. As you continue to practice, you may find that compassion arises spontaneously, actions become more aligned with wisdom, and life feels richer and more interconnected. This evolution supports the overall path of reducing suffering by seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be, and it encourages a heartfelt engagement with the world that benefits both yourself and those around you. By letting go of the illusion of a permanent and separate self, you step into a more authentic and harmonious existence, where every experience is met with openness and every connection is cherished without barriers. Once we begin to see through the illusion of a permanent self, another layer of mental habit often reveals itself: the constant chattering worry about what might happen tomorrow, next week, or years from now. This anxiety about the future can feel so real and urgent, but it silently steals the peace and potential of the present moment, leaving us trapped in a world of what-ifs that may never come to pass. Living in this state of excessive future-oriented worry is like trying to navigate a forest by only staring at a map of possible paths, most of which do not even exist yet, while missing the actual terrain under your feet. You might find yourself lying awake at night rehearsing conversations that have not happened, fretting over financial scenarios that are purely hypothetical, or imagining worst-case outcomes for events that are entirely beyond your control. This mental time travel into the future is not only exhausting but also fundamentally useless because the future is inherently uncertain and unpredictable, shaped by countless variables that we cannot possibly account for in our minds. Moreover, this habit of worrying does not prepare us for what is to come. Instead, it paralyzes us in the now, draining the energy and focus we could be using to take constructive actions in the present. Buddhism teaches that life truly happens only in the here and now, and that fixating on the future is a form of suffering that arises from our inability to accept the impermanent and unknown nature of existence. When we are caught in future anxiety, we are essentially suffering in advance for something that may never occur, and this anticipatory pain can be more debilitating than the actual events themselves. For instance, you might spend days anxious about a job interview, imagining rejection and failure, only to find that the actual experience, while challenging, was manageable and even educational. The energy wasted on those days of worry could have been channeled into preparation or self-care, making you more resilient and focused when the moment arrived. This is not to say that planning for the future is unwise. In fact, setting intentions and making thoughtful plans is a practical and necessary part of life. However, there is a crucial difference between planning and worrying. Planning involves taking actionable steps based on current information, while worrying is a repetitive, circular thought process that rarely leads to solutions and often amplifies fear. Planning is like packing a bag for a trip. You consider what you might need and prepare accordingly, but worrying is like packing the same bag over and over again, adding unnecessary items out of fear without ever leaving the house. The Buddhist approach emphasizes mindfulness, or staying fully engaged with the present moment, as an antidote to future anxiety. Through practices like meditation, we train our minds to return to the now, noticing when we drift into future scenarios and gently guiding our attention back to our breath, our body, or our immediate surroundings. This does not mean ignoring future responsibilities or goals. It means engaging with them from a place of presence rather than panic. For example, if you have a project deadline, you can focus on the single task in front of you, writing one paragraph or making one phone call, rather than becoming overwhelmed by thoughts of the entire project's success or failure. By breaking down future concerns into present moment actions, you reduce the mental load and increase your effectiveness. Another helpful perspective from Buddhism is the understanding of impermanence. Everything changes, and the future will inevitably be different from what we imagine. So clinging to specific outcomes only sets us up for disappointment. Instead, we can cultivate a trust in our ability to handle whatever arises, knowing that we have navigated challenges before and can do so again. Practical steps to reduce future worry include starting a daily mindfulness practice, even if it is just for 5 minutes, where you sit quietly and observe your thoughts without judgment, noting when they leap ahead and gently bringing them back. You can also keep a worry journal, where you write down your anxieties and then reflect on how many of them actually came true over time. You will likely find that most feared events never happen, and those that do are often less severe than imagined. Additionally, engaging fully in simple activities like washing dishes, walking in nature, or listening to music can anchor you in the present and remind you of the richness available right now. When you notice yourself worrying, ask, is this thought helpful? Is there anything I can do about this right now? If there is, take small, concrete steps. If not, practice letting go and returning to the present. Over time, this shift in focus can significantly reduce anxiety and increase your sense of control and peace. The benefits of quieting future worry are profound. You sleep better. Your relationships improve because you are more present with loved ones, and your overall mental health strengthens as you break free from the cycle of rumination. You might also discover that the present moment is almost always sufficiently good, that even in challenges, there is something to appreciate or learn from. This does not mean becoming passive or neglecting the future. Rather, it means engaging with life more fully and responsively, without the constant background noise of fear. As you practice, you will find that you are more creative and adaptable because you are not constrained by rigid expectations, and you can respond to changes with greater flexibility. Remember, this is a gradual process. Be patient with yourself when worries arise, and celebrate the moments when you choose presence over panic. By silently eliminating the habit of excessive future worry, you reclaim your mental energy and open yourself to a more joyful and engaged life, where each moment is lived fully rather than sacrificed to imaginary tomorrows. This journey from anxiety to awareness aligns with the broader Buddhist path of reducing suffering by embracing reality as it is, and it empowers you to face the unknown with curiosity and courage rather than dread. Similarly, when we fixate on the past, we engage in a different kind of time travel that can be just as draining, if not more so, because the past is sealed and unchangeable. Yet we often treat it as a live wound that needs constant attention. This attachment to what has already happened manifests as regret over choices we made, guilt about actions we took or did not take, and a nostalgic longing for moments that are gone, all of which pull us away from the vibrant reality of the present. You might find yourself replaying an old argument, wishing you had said something different, or dwelling on a missed opportunity, imagining how your life would be better if only you had acted otherwise. This mental habit is like trying to drive a car while only looking in the rearview mirror. You cannot see where you are going, and you are likely to crash into the obstacles right in front of you. In Buddhist terms, this clinging to the past is a form of attachment that generates suffering because it keeps us trapped in a cycle of rumination and emotional pain, preventing us from experiencing the fullness of now. The Buddha taught that the past is an illusion. It no longer exists except as a memory. which is often distorted by our current emotions and perceptions. When we hold on to these memories, especially negative ones, we are essentially carrying a heavy burden that weighs down our spirit and limits our potential for happiness and growth. For instance, if you regret a financial mistake from years ago, you might become overly cautious and miss out on wise investments today. Or if you cling to a past relationship, you might struggle to open your heart to new connections. This attachment can also lead to behaviours like avoidance, where we steer clear of situations that remind us of past failures, or compensation, where we overwork to prove ourselves due to unresolved insecurities. The practice of letting go does not mean forgetting the past or ignoring its lessons. Rather, it involves acknowledging what happened, learning from it, and then releasing the emotional charge so that we can move forward with clarity and peace. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool for this process, as it teaches us to observe our thoughts and memories without judgment, seeing them as passing clouds in the sky of our mind. When a memory of regret arises, instead of getting swept away by it, we can note it gently. There is a thought about the past, and return our focus to our breath or the sensations in our body. This creates a space between us and the memory, reducing its power to dictate our emotions. Over time, this practice helps us recognize that we are not our past actions or experiences. We are the awareness that observes them, and this shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating. Another key aspect is forgiveness, which is central to Buddhist teachings on healing. Forgiving others who may have hurt us is important, but self-forgiveness is often the more challenging and crucial step. Many of us hold onto self-blame for things we did or did not do, and this can create a cycle of shame that hampers our growth. To practice self-forgiveness, start by acknowledging the mistake with honesty and compassion, understanding that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge and resources you had at the time. Then, make amends if possible, and commit to acting differently in the future, but release the need to punish yourself repeatedly. This is not about condoning harmful behavior, but about freeing yourself from the prison of perpetual guilt. Reflection is also valuable. Instead of ruminating on what went wrong, ask yourself what you learned from the experience and how it has made you wiser or stronger. For example, a past failure at work might have taught you the importance of preparation or teamwork, which you can apply now. Writing in a journal can facilitate this process. Putting down your thoughts and feelings about the past can help you process them and gain perspective. And you might even choose to symbolically let go by tearing up the pages or burning them in a safe ritual. Additionally, cultivating gratitude for the present moment can counteract the pull of regret. By focusing on what you have now, your health, relationships, or simple pleasures, you shift your energy from lack to abundance, which naturally diminishes the appeal of dwelling on what is lost. Engaging in activities that fully immerse you in the present, such as gardening, cooking, or playing with children, can also anchor you in the now and remind you of life's ongoing flow. It is important to recognize that the past has shaped you, but it does not define you. Each moment offers a fresh start, a new opportunity to create karma through mindful actions. In Buddhism, karma is about intention and action in the present, not a fixed destiny from the past. So by focusing on positive actions now, you can transform your future without being chained to previous missteps. As you practice letting go of past attachments, you may notice physical and emotional benefits, less tension in your body, improved sleep, and a greater sense of lightness and joy. Your relationships may improve because you are more present with others, not distracted by old grievances, and you become more resilient in facing challenges because you are not carrying extra baggage. This journey from regret to acceptance is a gradual one, and it requires patience and self-compassion. There will be days when memories resurface strongly, and that is okay. each time you choose to meet them with awareness rather than resistance, you strengthen your ability to live fully in the present. By quietly eliminating the habit of clinging to the past, you open yourself to a life of renewal and possibility, where every day is a blank canvas, and you are the artist, free to create something beautiful. This alignment with the present moment is the essence of Buddhist practice, leading to a profound inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances or past events. Embracing this way of being allows you to honor your history without being enslaved by it, and to step into each new moment with curiosity, courage, and an open heart. As we learn to step into each moment with an open heart, free from the weight of past regrets, we might still find ourselves caught in another subtle yet pervasive habit, constantly measuring our lives, achievements, and possessions against those of other people. This tendency to compare ourselves to others can sneak into our thoughts when we scroll through social media, chat with friends, or even walk down the street, leading to feelings of inadequacy, envy, or unjustified superiority that quietly drain our joy. At its core, comparison is a mental activity that ignores the fundamental Buddhist teaching of karma, which suggests that each individual has a unique journey shaped by their own past actions, circumstances, and inner development, making direct comparisons not only unfair but also completely meaningless. When we compare, we are essentially looking at someone else's highlight reel and judging our own behind-the-scenes reality, which sets us up for endless dissatisfaction because there will always be someone who seems to have more, do more, or be more in some aspect of life. This habit pulls our focus away from our own path and progress, blinding us to the blessings and opportunities that are uniquely ours. And it often fuels a competitive mindset that treats life as a race to be won rather than a personal journey to be experienced. In Buddhism, the practice is centered on self-observation and inner growth, not on external competition or validation, because true contentment comes from understanding and accepting our own progress without reference to others. For example, you might feel discouraged because a colleague got a promotion you wanted, but that single event does not define your entire career path or worth, and it certainly does not account for the countless factors, like their past efforts, personal challenges, or even luck, that contributed to their success. Similarly, comparing your body, relationships, or lifestyle to others can create a cycle of negative self-talk and unnecessary stress, as you chase an idealized version of happiness that may not even align with your true values or needs. The first step to quieting this habit is to become aware of when comparison arises in your mind. Notice those moments when you feel a pang of envy or start mentally listing how you stack up against someone else, and simply acknowledge the thought without judgment. Mindfulness meditation can be incredibly helpful here, as it trains you to observe these comparative thoughts as passing mental events rather than truths, allowing you to let them go and return your attention to your own experience. Another practical approach is to cultivate gratitude for your own journey by regularly reflecting on your strengths, accomplishments, and the lessons you have learned, perhaps through journaling or quiet contemplation, which reinforces a sense of self-worth that is independent of external measures. It is also beneficial to limit exposure to triggers that fuel comparison, such as excessive time on social media platforms where curated images can distort reality, and instead seek out communities or activities that encourage authenticity and mutual support. When you do find yourself comparing, try to reframe the thought by considering the whole picture. Remember that everyone faces struggles and insecurities that are not visible from the outside, and that your path is uniquely yours, with its own timing and purpose. Buddhism teaches that focusing on your own ethical conduct, mental development, and compassionate actions is far more fruitful than worrying about how you measure up to others, as this inner focus leads to genuine peace and resilience. As you practice letting go of comparison, You may discover that your relationships improve because you are no longer viewing others as benchmarks or threats, but as fellow travelers on their own paths, which fosters empathy and connection instead of jealousy or rivalry. Your creativity and innovation can flourish because you are not constrained by the fear of not being as good as someone else, freeing you to explore new ideas and take risks without self-censorship. Over time, this shift away from comparison helps you develop a deeper appreciation for your own growth, celebrating small victories and learning from setbacks without the pressure to keep up with anyone else. This does not mean you should ignore inspiration from others. Healthy admiration can motivate you, but it becomes toxic when it turns into constant measurement and self-criticism. The key is to use others as sources of learning and encouragement rather than as standards for your own worth. For instance, if you admire someone's creativity, you can explore how to cultivate your own unique expression instead of trying to replicate their achievements. By quietly eliminating the habit of comparison, you reclaim your mental energy and focus, redirecting it toward actions that align with your values and bring you genuine fulfillment. This process naturally leads to a more authentic life, where your choices are driven by inner guidance rather than external validation, and you find satisfaction in the progress you make each day, however small it may seem. The benefits extend beyond personal peace to a greater sense of community, as when we stop comparing, we can truly rejoice in others' successes, a practice known in Buddhism as mudita, or sympathetic joy, which transforms potential envy into shared happiness and strengthens social bonds. Embracing this mindset requires patience and self-compassion, as comparison is a deeply ingrained habit in many cultures. But with consistent practice, you will notice that your default mode shifts from judgment to curiosity and self-acceptance. You might start to see challenges as opportunities for growth unique to your journey, and you will likely feel a lightness and freedom that comes from no longer being in an imaginary competition. This alignment with your own path supports the broader Buddhist goal of reducing suffering by letting go of attachments that cause discontent, and it empowers you to live more fully in the present, appreciating what is rather than lamenting what is not. As you continue on this journey, remember that the only meaningful comparison is with your past self, using it as a gentle guide for growth without harsh criticism, and that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory in its own right. By releasing the need to compare, you open yourself to a life of greater joy, authenticity, and connection, where you can thrive in your own unique way, contributing your special gifts to the world without the shadow of someone else's path. This evolution from external measurement to internal fulfillment is a powerful step toward enduring happiness, and it beautifully complements the other silent eliminations we have explored, creating a holistic approach to a peaceful and purposeful life. Moving beyond the habit of comparing ourselves to others, we often encounter another subtle yet deeply ingrained pattern: the compelling need to always be right in our opinions, beliefs, and everyday interactions. This urge can surface in casual conversations, heated debates, or even private thoughts, where we feel a strong attachment to proving our point and defending our stance against any opposing views. At its heart, this need stems from a fragile ego that seeks validation and security through being correct, as if our self-worth depends on winning arguments or having the final say. In Buddhist teachings, this is linked to the concept of dristi, or attachment to views, which is considered a form of clinging that generates conflict, closes the mind to new insights, and ultimately leads to suffering. When we insist on being right, we are often driven by fear of being seen as incompetent, fear of losing control, or fear of confronting the uncertainty that comes with not knowing everything. This mindset can turn discussions into battles, where the goal shifts from understanding others to defeating them, and it prevents genuine connection and learning. For example, Dot, in a family disagreement about politics or lifestyle choices, insisting on your correctness might create resentment and distance rather than fostering mutual respect and open dialogue. Similarly, in the workplace, clinging rigidly to your methods or ideas can stifle collaboration and innovation, as others may feel unheard or undervalued. The Buddhist approach encourages cultivating humility and an open mind, recognizing that reality is complex and multifaceted, and no single perspective can capture its entirety. This doesn't mean abandoning your beliefs or values, but rather holding them lightly, with a willingness to consider other viewpoints and adapt when new information arises. Practicing this begins with self-awareness. Noticing when that urge to be right arises, perhaps you feel tension in your body, a rush of defensiveness, or an impulse to interrupt, and pausing to ask yourself what you're truly seeking. Is it understanding, or is it victory? Mindfulness meditation can help here, as it trains you to observe these impulses without acting on them, creating space for more thoughtful responses. In conversations, try shifting from a debate mindset to a curious one. Instead of aiming to prove your point, ask questions to understand the other person's perspective, and you might discover common ground or learn something new. This practice of active listening not only reduces conflict but also enriches your own understanding, as every interaction becomes an opportunity for growth. Another helpful strategy is to reflect on past experiences where being wrong led to positive outcomes, like learning a valuable lesson or strengthening a relationship, which can soften the fear associated with admitting error. Buddhism emphasizes the importance of right speech and right intention from the Eightfold Path, which involve communicating truthfully and kindly without the need to dominate or belittle others. By letting go of the need to be right, you foster an environment of trust and collaboration where ideas can flow freely and solutions emerge collectively. This shift also aligns with the understanding of impermanence. What seems true today might change tomorrow, so flexibility becomes a strength rather than a weakness. As you practice, you may notice a sense of relief, as you're no longer carrying the burden of having to have all the answers, and this lightness allows for more authentic and joyful engagements with others. Your relationships may deepen because people feel respected and valued in your presence, and you become more approachable and empathetic. In personal growth, embracing uncertainty opens doors to creativity and resilience, as you're more willing to experiment, fail, and adapt without your ego getting in the way. It's important to note that this isn't about becoming passive or indifferent. It's about engaging with the world from a place of confidence that doesn't rely on external validation. You can still hold strong convictions and advocate for what you believe in, but with an openness that acknowledges the limits of your own knowledge. Over time, quieting this need for rightness leads to inner peace, as you're less affected by disagreements and more focused on the process of learning and connecting. This journey requires patience and self-compassion, as the habit of insisting on being right is often reinforced by cultural norms that prize certainty and expertise. Celebrate small steps, like acknowledging when you're unsure or apologizing when you've made a mistake, and observe how these actions strengthen rather than diminish your sense of self. By eliminating the silent habit of always needing to be right, you reclaim mental energy for more meaningful pursuits, and you contribute to a more harmonious and compassionate world, one conversation at a time. This progression from self-centeredness to openness beautifully complements the other eliminations we've explored, creating a holistic path toward a balanced and fulfilling life rooted in present moment awareness and genuine connection. After freeing ourselves from the mental rigidity of always needing to be right, we might turn our attention to the physical world and notice another habit that quietly weighs us down: the accumulation of unnecessary material possessions. It is so easy in our consumer-driven society to fall into the trap of believing that more stuff equals more happiness. that the next purchase will finally bring us lasting satisfaction. But this constant gathering often leads to clutter not just in our homes but in our minds, creating a cycle of desire and disappointment that distracts us from what truly matters. From a Buddhist perspective, this attachment to material things is a form of craving that reinforces the illusion of a solid self and generates suffering because it ties our peace to external objects that are impermanent and ultimately unsatisfying. Think about the last time you bought something new. The initial thrill quickly fades, and soon you are left with another item to store, maintain, or worry about, which can lead to stress and a feeling of being overwhelmed by your own belongings. This habit of accumulating goes beyond practical needs. It becomes a way to fill emotional voids, seek security, or even project an image to others, but it rarely addresses the underlying needs for connection, purpose, or inner peace. Buddhism challenges this mindset by emphasizing simplicity and non-attachment, not as a call to extreme poverty, but as an invitation to discern what is essential and let go of the excess that burdens our lives. The practice of generosity, or dana dot, is often highlighted as a direct antidote to materialism, teaching that true wealth comes from giving rather than hoarding, and that sharing our resources can break the grip of greed and open our hearts to greater joy. When we silently eliminate the habit of unnecessary accumulation, we are not just decluttering our spaces, we are reclaiming our mental energy and creating room for more meaningful experiences and relationships. Start by observing your impulses to acquire, whether it is browsing online sales, stocking up on items you rarely use, or holding on to things out of fear of future need, and bring mindfulness to these moments. Ask yourself if a potential purchase aligns with your actual needs, or if it is driven by habit, boredom, or social pressure. Practicing gratitude for what you already have can shift your focus from scarcity to abundance, helping you appreciate the sufficiency of the present moment. You might begin with a small area of your home, like a closet or a drawer, and thoughtfully consider each item, letting go of what no longer serves a purpose or brings you joy. This process of letting go is not about deprivation, but about liberation. As you discover that having less can actually mean enjoying more space, more clarity, and more freedom from the constant chase after possessions. As you reduce physical clutter, you may notice a corresponding lightness in your mind, with reduced anxiety and a greater capacity for focus and creativity. Additionally, embracing minimalism or mindful consumption can lead to financial benefits, as you spend less on non-essentials and save resources for experiences that enrich your life, like travel, learning, or time with loved ones. It is also helpful to reflect on the environmental impact of overconsumption. By consuming less, you contribute to sustainability and reduce your ecological footprint, which aligns with the Buddhist principle of non-harming. In relationships, letting go of material attachments can foster deeper connections, as you prioritize people over things and engage in shared activities that do not revolve around spending or owning. For example, instead of buying expensive gifts, you might offer your time, attention, or a handmade item, which often holds more sentimental value. The practice of giving away items you no longer need, whether to charity, friends, or community, can be a powerful way to cultivate generosity and experience the joy of contributing to others' well-being. Over time, this shift away from accumulation helps you develop a more resilient sense of self-worth that is not tied to what you own, and you become less vulnerable to the ups and downs of consumer culture. This journey requires patience and self-compassion, as habits of accumulation are deeply ingrained and often supported by advertising and social norms. There might be moments of discomfort when you let go of familiar items, but with each release, you strengthen your ability to detach and trust in your own resourcefulness. Celebrate the milestones, like passing on a cherished item without regret or resisting an unnecessary purchase. And notice how these small acts build confidence in living with less. By quietly eliminating unnecessary material accumulation, you align your life with values of simplicity and mindfulness, which supports the broader path of reducing suffering through non-attachment. This practice dovetails with the other habits we have explored, such as letting go of comparison or the need for validation, creating a cohesive approach to a more intentional and peaceful existence. As you continue, you might find that your desires become simpler and more aligned with your true needs, and that happiness arises more readily from within, independent of external conditions. Ultimately, this process empowers you to live with greater authenticity and purpose, where your energy is directed toward growth, connection, and contribution, rather than the endless pursuit of more stuff. Embracing this way of being does not mean rejecting all material comforts, but rather engaging with them consciously, so that they serve you without owning you. In doing so, you discover the profound truth that less can indeed be more, and that the greatest treasures often lie in the intangible moments of peace, love, and presence that no object can ever provide. After simplifying our physical surroundings and letting go of unnecessary possessions, we often turn our attention to how we manage our time and energy. And one habit that frequently stands out is the tendency to juggle multiple tasks at once, believing it makes us more productive and efficient. This chronic multitasking has become a default mode for many of us, whether we are answering emails while watching television, scrolling through social media during meetings, or trying to cook dinner while helping kids with homework, all under the illusion that we are getting more done in less time. However, this divided attention is actually the complete opposite of mindfulness, fragmenting our mental focus and preventing us from fully engaging with any single activity. When we split our awareness across several tasks, our mind becomes scattered and superficial, like a camera lens that is constantly refocusing but never sharp enough to capture any detail clearly. This state not only increases stress levels because our brain is working overtime to switch between tasks, but it also robs us of the depth and richness that come from immersing ourselves fully in one experience. Buddhism teaches the value of doing one thing at a time with complete presence. Whether it is something as mundane as washing dishes or as complex as leading a business presentation, because this approach aligns with the practice of meditation in action. By focusing wholly on the task at hand, we cultivate a calm and centered mind that is more capable of handling challenges with clarity and creativity. The essence of this practice is not about slowing down for the sake of it, but about bringing a quality of attention that transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for awareness and growth. For instance, when you eat a meal without distractions, you might notice the flavors, textures, and sensations more vividly, turning a routine act into a mindful experience that nourishes both body and spirit. Similarly, when you listen to someone without checking your phone, you foster deeper connections and understanding because your undivided attention signals respect and care. Chronic multitasking, on the other hand, often leads to a sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction as we rush through activities without truly experiencing them, and this can contribute to feelings of burnout and anxiety over time. Research in psychology supports this, showing that task switching can reduce productivity by up to 40% and increase error rates, because our brains are not designed to handle multiple cognitive tasks simultaneously without a cost. In contrast, single tasking allows for a flow state where we can lose ourselves in the activity, leading to higher quality outcomes and a greater sense of fulfillment. To begin reducing multitasking, start by noticing when you are tempted to do several things at once. Perhaps you feel an urge to check notifications while working or to plan your next task while still engaged in the current one. Acknowledge these impulses without judgment and gently guide your focus back to one activity, Setting clear intentions for your day can help. For example, you might decide to dedicate specific blocks of time to particular tasks, and during those periods, eliminate potential distractions by turning off unnecessary devices or finding a quiet space. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool to strengthen this skill, as it trains your mind to return to a single point of focus, like the breath, whenever it wanders. By practicing this regularly, you build the mental muscle needed to sustain attention in daily life. Another practical step is to prioritize your tasks and tackle them one by one, celebrating small completions rather than feeling pressured to do everything at once. This does not mean you cannot have multiple responsibilities, but rather that you approach them sequentially, giving each the attention it deserves. As you practice single tasking, you may discover a calmer efficiency where tasks take less time because you are fully present and less prone to mistakes or revisions. Your appreciation for simple acts deepens. 2. Walking in the park becomes more enjoyable when you are not mentally rehearsing a to-do list. And conversations become more meaningful when you are truly listening. This shift from quantity to quality can enhance all areas of your life, from work to relationships, as you bring a more engaged and thoughtful presence to each interaction. Over time, letting go of chronic multitasking can reduce stress and increase your overall sense of well-being, because you are no longer straining to keep up with an artificial pace. It also aligns with the Buddhist principle of being here now, which emphasizes that peace and happiness are found in the present moment, not in the frantic pursuit of future accomplishments. Remember, this is a gradual process, and it is okay to have days when multitasking feels unavoidable. The key is to gently recommit to presence whenever you notice yourself drifting. By quietly eliminating this habit, you open yourself to a more intentional and joyful way of living, where each moment is valued for its own sake, and your life becomes a series of rich, fully experienced events rather than a blur of half-finished tasks. This journey from fragmentation to wholeness complements the other silent eliminations we have explored, creating a cohesive path toward a mindful and balanced existence. As you continue, you might find that your creativity flourishes, your relationships deepen, and your inner peace grows, all because you have chosen to do less, but be more in everything you do. After learning to focus on one task at a time and finding peace in undivided attention, we often become more attuned to the subtle patterns of our inner dialogue. And one of the most pervasive habits that can emerge is the automatic tendency toward negativity and cynicism, where we instinctively expect the worst in situations or people without even realizing it. This mental filter can color our entire experience, turning neutral events into sources of frustration and making it harder to appreciate the good that is already present in our lives. Automatic negativity is that immediate, often unchallenged thought that things will go wrong, that people have ulterior motives, or that efforts are futile, while cynicism adds a layer of distrust and scorn, dismissing positivity as naive or unrealistic. This habit is like wearing tinted glasses that darken everything you see. It does not change reality, but it sure makes it feel gloomier and more hostile, which in turn affects your mood, decisions, and interactions with others. In Buddhist teachings, this is linked to the concept of unwholesome mental states that arise from aversion and ignorance, and it is addressed through the Eightfold Path, specifically right thought or right intention, which encourages cultivating thoughts of non-aversion, benevolence, and compassion. It is important to note that this is not about forcing yourself into a state of toxic positivity where you deny real problems or suppress genuine emotions. Rather, it is about making a conscious choice to not feed the negative mental seeds that can grow into full-blown suffering. The mind is often compared to a garden in Buddhist philosophy. Whatever you water and nurture will flourish. So if you consistently dwell on negative interpretations, you strengthen those neural pathways, making them your default response over time. This habit of automatic negativity often stems from a protective mechanism of the ego, which uses cynicism as a shield against potential disappointment or hurt. But in doing so, it creates a barrier that isolates you from joy, connection, and opportunities for growth. For example, if you automatically assume a colleague's feedback is criticism meant to undermine you, you might respond defensively and miss a chance to learn. Or if you cynically dismiss a new idea as impractical, you could stifle innovation and collaboration. Over time, this pattern can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and even physical health issues as the body reacts to the constant state of alert and pessimism. Moreover, it can erode relationships, as people may feel drained or misunderstood when met with persistent negativity, and it can create a self-fulfilling prophecy where your expectations of failure or betrayal actually contribute to those outcomes. To begin quieting this habit, start with mindfulness. Simply notice when negative or cynical thoughts arise without judging yourself for having them. Pay attention to the triggers. Perhaps it is during stressful times, when you are tired, or in specific social situations, and observe how these thoughts feel in your body, like tension in your shoulders or a knot in your stomach. This awareness creates a gap between the thought and your reaction, giving you the space to choose a different response. Meditation is a powerful practice for this, as it trains you to sit with your thoughts and emotions without getting entangled in them, allowing you to see them as passing mental events rather than absolute truths. During meditation, when a negative thought pops up, acknowledge it gently, label it as thinking, and return your focus to your breath or a neutral anchor. This reinforces the skill of detachment in daily life. Another practical step is to challenge and reframe negative thoughts by asking yourself questions like, is this thought absolutely true? What evidence do I have for it? Is there a more balanced or compassionate way to view this situation? For instance, if you find yourself thinking, I never do anything right, you might reframe it to, I made a mistake this time, but I have succeeded in many other areas, and I can learn from this. This is not about denying reality, but about broadening your perspective to include positive or neutral aspects that your automatic negativity might be filtering out. Cultivating gratitude is also a potent antidote. Each day, take a few moments to reflect on specific things you are thankful for, no matter how small, like a warm cup of tea, a kind word from a friend, or the beauty of nature. This practice shifts your focus from what is wrong to what is right, gradually rewiring your brain to notice and appreciate goodness. Additionally, practice acts of kindness and compassion, both towards yourself and others, as this directly counters the cynicism that separates you from people. When you engage in helping someone or offering a genuine compliment, you reinforce a sense of interconnectedness and hope. It is also helpful to curate your environment by reducing exposure to sources that fuel negativity, such as excessive news consumption or toxic social media feeds, and instead surround yourself with uplifting content, supportive people, and activities that bring you joy. Remember, this is a gradual process, and it is okay to have setbacks. The goal is progress, not perfection. Celebrate small victories, like catching a cynical thought and choosing to let it go, or noticing a positive aspect in a challenging situation. Over time, as you practice these techniques, you will likely find that your overall outlook becomes more balanced and hopeful, leading to greater emotional resilience and inner peace. Your relationships may improve because you are more open and less defensive, and you might even inspire others to adopt a more positive mindset. This journey from automatic negativity to mindful awareness aligns with the Buddhist path of reducing suffering by transforming your relationship with your thoughts, and it empowers you to live with more joy and authenticity. By quietly eliminating this habit, you not only enhance your own well-being, but also contribute to a more compassionate and positive world, one thought at a time. This natural progression from managing external behaviors to refining internal patterns supports a holistic approach to a fulfilling life, where each moment is met with clarity and kindness rather than fear and judgment. As you continue, you will discover that the world has not changed, but your way of seeing it has, opening up new possibilities for happiness and connection that were always there, waiting to be noticed. As we cultivate a more balanced and positive mindset, freeing ourselves from the automatic filters of negativity and cynicism, we naturally open up to the world in a more expansive way, and this often brings into focus another habit that can quietly limit our happiness and connection: the tendency to hold tightly onto our resources, time, and energy, often out of a deep-seated fear of scarcity. This lack of generosity or stinginess is not just about money. It can manifest in how we share our attention, our skills, or even our compassion with others. And it usually stems from an underlying belief that there is not enough to go around, that if we give, we will be left with less for ourselves. In Buddhist teachings, this mindset is seen as a form of attachment that reinforces the illusion of a separate self and creates suffering because it closes our hearts and isolates us from the interconnected web of life. Generosity, known as dana, is considered the very foundation of the path to enlightenment, the first of the paramitas or perfections, because it directly counteracts the greed and fear that keep us trapped in cycles of lack and dissatisfaction. When we practice giving without expecting anything in return, we are not just performing a kind act, we are actively dismantling the walls of the ego and tapping into a profound truth: that our well-being is intimately tied to the well-being of others. This does not mean you have to give away all your possessions or exhaust yourself. Rather, it is about cultivating a spirit of openness and willingness to share what you have, whether it is a small amount of money, a few minutes of your time, or a word of encouragement. Think about those moments when you have hesitated to offer help. Maybe you were worried about your own deadlines or felt that your contribution would not matter. But then recall how good it felt when you did step forward and saw the positive impact, however small. This practice of generosity is a powerful antidote to the scarcity mindset because it teaches us through experience that the more we give, the more we receive in terms of joy, connection, and inner peace. It is like a muscle that grows stronger with use. The more we exercise it, the more natural it becomes to act from a place of abundance rather than fear. In daily life, this might look like volunteering for a cause you care about, sharing knowledge with a colleague, or simply listening fully when someone needs to talk, without thinking about what you will get back. Buddhism emphasizes that the intention behind the giving is what matters most. Doing it quietly and anonymously is often seen as the purest form because it avoids the trap of seeking recognition or reward, which can feed the ego instead of diminishing it. This aligns with the understanding of karma, where selfless actions create positive conditions for future happiness. Not as a transaction, but as a natural outcome of living in harmony with the principle of interdependence. When we hold back out of stinginess, we are essentially acting from a place of contraction that says, I am separate, and I need to protect what is mine. But when we give, we affirm, we are all in this together, and my abundance can be a source of collective well-being. This shift can have ripple effects, improving relationships as people feel valued and supported, and even enhancing your own sense of self-worth because you are acting in alignment with your highest values. To start incorporating more generosity into your life, begin with small, manageable acts that feel authentic to you. Notice when the impulse to hold back arises, perhaps when asked for a donation, or when a friend needs emotional support, and pause to explore the fear behind it. Is it a fear of running out of time, money, energy, Mindfulness can help here. Observe these thoughts without judgment and consider if they are based on reality or old conditioning. Then, make a conscious choice to give in a way that feels right, even if it is just a little. For example, you might decide to donate a small amount to a charity regularly, offer to help a neighbour with a task, or share a meal with someone who is lonely. The key is consistency and sincerity, not the size of the gift. Over time, you will likely find that the act of giving becomes its own reward, filling you with a sense of purpose and connection that material possessions alone cannot provide. It also helps to reflect on the times you have been on the receiving end of generosity, how it made you feel seen and supported, and to carry that gratitude into your own actions. As you practice, you may notice that your attachment to things loosens, and you feel lighter and more free, because you are no longer defined by what you have but by what you can give. This journey from stinginess to generosity is a gradual one, and it is okay to start small. The important thing is to begin and to keep the intention clear. Remember, generosity is not just about material things. It includes your time, your attention, your forgiveness, and your love. By quietly eliminating the habit of holding back, you open yourself to a more fluid and compassionate way of living, where every interaction becomes an opportunity to contribute to the well-being of the whole. This practice dovetails beautifully with the other habits we have been exploring, such as letting go of comparison and negativity, creating a cohesive path toward a more mindful and fulfilling life. As you continue, you might discover that the world feels more supportive and abundant, not because it has changed, but because your relationship with it has transformed through the simple, powerful act of giving. After embracing a spirit of generosity and learning to share our time and resources more freely, we often find ourselves facing another subtle yet pervasive habit that can undermine our newfound openness: the constant state of hurry that has become the default mode for so many of us in modern life. It is that feeling of always being behind, rushing from one task to the next, cramming as much as possible into every minute, and feeling anxious when things do not move quickly enough. This hurried pace is not just about being busy, it is a deep-seated pattern that makes us live as if we are racing towards some future point where we will finally be able to relax and enjoy life, all while missing the richness of the present moment. In Buddhism, this is seen as a form of violence against ourselves and the now, because it denies the reality of what is happening right here and now in favour of an imagined future that may never arrive. When we are always in a rush, we are essentially saying that the present is not good enough, that we need to get somewhere else to be happy, which creates a constant undercurrent of dissatisfaction and stress. This hurry often stems from a desire to achieve more, to acquire more, or to avoid uncomfortable feelings like boredom or inadequacy, but it ultimately prevents us from experiencing life deeply and authentically. For example, when we eat quickly while scrolling on our phones, we miss the taste and nourishment of the food. When we hurry through a conversation, we fail to truly connect with the person in front of us. And when we rush through our work, we make more errors and feel more drained than if we had proceeded with care. The Buddhist path emphasizes patience, or khanti, and full awareness as antidotes to this frantic pace, encouraging us to honor the natural rhythm of things and to trust that everything unfolds in its own time. By voluntarily slowing down, we perform a revolutionary act of wisdom that reconnects us with the true texture of life, allowing us to notice details, appreciate beauty, and respond to challenges with greater clarity and compassion. This does not mean we should abandon responsibilities or become lazy. Rather, it is about shifting from a mode of frantic doing to one of mindful being, where we engage with each activity fully and without the pressure to hurry. To begin addressing this habit, start by noticing when you feel rushed, perhaps when you are getting ready in the morning. commuting, or dealing with deadlines, and observe the physical sensations that accompany hurry, like shallow breathing, tense muscles, or a racing heart. Simply bringing awareness to these moments can create a pause that allows you to choose a different response. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful practice for cultivating this awareness, as it trains you to sit with whatever arises without rushing to change it, fostering a sense of inner calm that can carry over into daily life. In practical terms, you might try building buffers into your schedule, such as leaving extra time between appointments or setting realistic goals for the day to reduce the need to rush. Another helpful strategy is to single task whenever possible, focusing on one activity at a time with your full attention, whether it is washing dishes, writing an email, or walking to the mailbox. This intentional slowness helps counter the cultural conditioning that values speed and productivity above all else. And it opens the door to deeper insights and creativity that often emerge only in moments of stillness. For instance, when you slow down, you might notice a solution to a problem that had eluded you while you were frantic, or you might feel a sense of gratitude for simple pleasures like the warmth of sunlight or the sound of birds. Over time, reducing hurry can lead to better health as chronic stress decreases, and improved relationships as you become more present and attentive with others. It also aligns with the Buddhist understanding of impermanence, reminding us that each moment is unique and fleeting, so rushing through it means missing out on life itself. As you practice slowing down, you may encounter resistance from old habits or external pressures, but remember that this is a gradual process, and even small changes can make a big difference. Celebrate moments when you consciously choose to slow down, like taking a deep breath before responding to a stressful email or savouring a cup of tea without distractions. By quietly eliminating the habit of constant hurry, you reclaim your ability to live fully in the present, finding joy and meaning in the ordinary moments that make up the fabric of your life. This journey from rush to repose complements the other silent eliminations we have explored, such as letting go of attachment to results and cultivating generosity, creating a holistic path toward a more peaceful and fulfilling existence. As you continue, you might discover that life feels richer and more spacious, not because you have more time, but because you are fully inhabiting the time you have, one mindful moment at a time. After finding more space and presence by slowing down our frantic pace, we often encounter a deeper, more fundamental fear that can lurk beneath the surface of our daily awareness, the intense and often unexamined dread of death and the loss of all that we hold dear. This fear is not just about the end of life itself, but extends to the countless smaller losses we face every day, the passing of time, the changing of relationships, the fading of health, or the disappearance of cherished moments, and it can silently shape our choices, create anxiety, and prevent us from fully embracing the present. In Buddhist teaching, this excessive fear is ultimately rooted in the attachment to the ego, the illusion of a permanent and separate self that we believe must be protected and preserved at all costs. When we cling to this idea of a solid I, the thought of its dissolution through death or loss becomes terrifying, triggering a cascade of worries about non-existence, oblivion, or the unknown. However, Buddhism offers a transformative perspective through the practice of maranasati, or mindfulness of death, which is not a morbid fixation on the end, but a powerful and sobering reflection on the impermanent nature of all things. This contemplation is designed to wake us up to the preciousness of each moment, helping us recognize that life is fleeting and that this very understanding can infuse our days with greater meaning, urgency, and joy. By consciously acknowledging the reality of death, we are not encouraged to live in fear, but to prioritize what truly matters, cultivating kindness, compassion, and meaningful actions, while letting go of trivial concerns and unnecessary conflicts. For instance, When we remember that our time with loved ones is limited, we might choose to listen more deeply, forgive more readily, and express appreciation more often, rather than getting caught up in arguments or distractions. Similarly, reflecting on the inevitability of loss can help us appreciate what we have right now without clutching it too tightly, allowing us to enjoy relationships, experiences, and possessions with a lighter grip that reduces suffering when change occurs. This practice aligns with the core Buddhist principle of anicca, or impermanence, which teaches that everything in the universe is in a constant state of flux. Our bodies, thoughts, emotions, and circumstances are all flowing and evolving, and resistance to this natural flow is what causes much of our pain. When we deeply internalize that loss is not an anomaly, but a universal law, we can shift from a mindset of fear to one of acceptance and even gratitude for the temporary gifts we receive. In daily life, this might mean savoring a beautiful sunset without lamenting its end, or valuing a conversation without worrying about when we will see the person again, because we understand that the beauty lies in its ephemeral nature. Practical ways to incorporate this understanding include setting aside a few moments each day for quiet reflection on impermanence, perhaps during meditation or while walking in nature, where we observe the cycles of growth and decay around us and recognize our place within them. We can also use reminders, such as the changing seasons or the aging process, to gently nudge ourselves back to presence when we get overly attached to outcomes or possessions. Another approach is to engage in compassionate actions that connect us to the broader human experience of loss and mortality, like volunteering in hospice care or supporting those who are grieving, which can demystify death and reduce its power to frighten us. It is important to note that this practice is not about denying grief or sadness when loss occurs. Rather, it is about preparing our hearts so that when difficult moments arise, we can meet them with resilience and wisdom, rather than being overwhelmed by shock or despair. Over time, as we quietly work with this fear, we may find that our overall anxiety diminishes because we are no longer investing energy in resisting the inevitable, and instead, we are channeling that energy into living more authentically and lovingly. Our relationships often deepen because we are more present and genuine, and we become less bothered by minor irritations or setbacks, seeing them as part of the larger tapestry of life. This shift does not happen overnight. It requires patience and gentle persistence, as fears of death and loss are deeply ingrained in many cultures and personal psyches. There may be moments of discomfort or resistance, and that is okay. The goal is not to eliminate fear entirely, but to relate to it differently, so that it no longer controls our decisions or steals our peace. By embracing this mindful approach, we discover that a life lived with awareness of death is not a life of gloom, but one of heightened vitality and appreciation, where each day is greeted as a gift and each interaction is infused with significance. This journey from fear to acceptance naturally complements the other habits we have been exploring, such as letting go of hurry and cultivating generosity, creating a cohesive path toward a more awakened and fulfilling existence. As we continue, we might notice that our sense of self becomes less rigid, and we feel more connected to the flow of life, trusting that even in loss, there is potential for growth and new beginnings. Ultimately, by quietly eliminating the excessive fear of death and loss, we free ourselves to live with courage, love, and a profound sense of wonder, knowing that the impermanence that once scared us is also what makes every moment so incredibly precious and worth fully experiencing. After coming to terms with the impermanence of life and reducing our fear of loss, we might notice that another subtle emotion often creeps into our daily experiences, one that can quietly undermine our peace and happiness: the feeling of envy and resentment when we see others achieving success, happiness, or recognition. It is that uncomfortable pang you feel when a friend lands a dream job, a colleague receives praise, or someone on social media flaunts their perfect life. And instead of feeling happy for them, you find yourself simmering with jealousy or even bitterness. This reaction is not just a minor annoyance. It is a mental poison that erodes our own joy and creates a sense of lack and dissatisfaction within us, making it harder to appreciate our own journey and blessings. Envy arises from a place of comparison, where we measure our own lives against others and come up short in our own eyes, often fueled by the illusion that there is only a limited amount of success or happiness to go around. So if someone else has it, there must be less for us. This mindset is rooted in what Buddhism calls the illusion of separateness, the belief that we are isolated individuals in competition with each other, rather than interconnected beings on unique paths. When we succumb to envy, we are essentially reinforcing this false sense of division, which leads to inner turmoil and strains our relationships with others. It is like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers. The only one truly harmed is ourselves. As we get trapped in cycles of negative thinking and emotional distress, Buddhism addresses this through the practice of mudita, or altruistic joy, which is the heartfelt ability to rejoice in the happiness and success of others as if it were our own. This does not mean pretending to be happy when you are not, or suppressing genuine feelings, but rather cultivating a genuine sense of shared joy that arises from understanding our interconnectedness. Mudita is considered one of the 4 sublime states in Buddhism, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. And it serves as a direct antidote to envy, because it shifts our focus from what we lack to the abundance of good fortune around us. When we practice mudita, we are not denying our own desires or goals. We are expanding our capacity for happiness by celebrating the wins of others, which in turn creates a more positive and supportive mental environment. For example, if you feel a twinge of envy when a coworker gets a promotion, instead of dwelling on feelings of inadequacy or unfairness, you might consciously choose to congratulate them sincerely and reflect on how their success contributes to the overall well-being of the team or community. This reframing can transform envy into inspiration, where their achievement motivates you to pursue your own goals with more enthusiasm and less self-doubt. To start incorporating mudita into your life, begin with mindfulness. Notice when feelings of envy or resentment arise without judging yourself. Pay attention to the physical sensations, maybe a tightness in your chest or a knot in your stomach, and the thoughts that accompany them, such as, why them and not me? Or, they don't deserve that. Simply acknowledging these thoughts and feelings can create a space where you can choose a different response. Meditation is a powerful tool for this. During your practice, you can visualize someone you know who is experiencing success or happiness and mentally send them wishes of joy and continued good fortune. At first, this might feel forced or unnatural, especially if envy is strong, but with consistent practice, it can become more genuine and effortless. Another practical step is to reflect on the concept of karma and unique life paths. Buddhism teaches that each person's journey is shaped by their own past actions and circumstances. So comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10 is not only unfair, but also irrelevant. Instead of seeing others' success as a threat, view it as evidence that good things are possible, which can foster hope and optimism in your own life. You can also cultivate gratitude for your own progress and blessings, which helps counter the scarcity mindset that fuels envy. Keep a journal where you regularly jot down things you are thankful for, including your own achievements and the positive aspects of your relationships. Additionally, limit exposure to triggers that exacerbate envy, such as excessive social media use, where people often present curated highlights of their lives, and instead engage in activities that connect you with real, face-to-face interactions and community support. When you find yourself feeling resentful, try to dig deeper into the underlying emotions. Often, envy masks insecurities, fears, or unmet needs within yourself. By addressing these core issues, such as through self-compassion or setting personal goals, you can reduce the power of envy over your emotions. Practicing mudita also involves actively sharing in others' joy. When someone shares good news, make an effort to respond with genuine enthusiasm and support, whether through words or actions. Over time, this can strengthen your relationships and create a ripple effect of positivity as people feel valued and encouraged around you. The benefits of quieting envy and resentment are profound. You will likely experience greater inner peace, improved self-esteem, and more harmonious connections with others. As you let go of comparison, you free up mental energy to focus on your own growth and contributions, leading to a more fulfilling and authentic life. This journey requires patience and self-kindness, as envy is a common human emotion influenced by societal pressures and personal insecurities. Celebrate small victories, like when you catch yourself feeling envious and choose to shift to mudita, or when you spontaneously feel happy for someone without any effort. By silently eliminating the habit of envy, you open your heart to a more joyful and connected existence, where success is not a finite resource but something to be celebrated collectively. This practice aligns with the broader Buddhist path of reducing suffering by letting go of attachments and cultivating wholesome mental states, and it complements the other habits we have explored, such as overcoming fear and practicing generosity. As you continue, you may find that life feels richer and more abundant, not because external circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has shifted to one of shared joy and interconnectedness. Embracing mudita allows you to transform envy from a source of pain into a catalyst for growth and connection, empowering you to live with a lighter heart and a more open spirit. After learning to transform envy into shared joy and finding happiness in others' successes, we might still notice a subtle restlessness within ourselves, a deep-seated aversion to any form of discomfort or boredom that arises in our daily lives. This intolerance is like an invisible force that drives us to constantly seek distractions, whether it is scrolling through our phones during a dull moment, overscheduling ourselves to avoid quiet, or numbing emotional unease with food, entertainment, or busy work. Our modern culture often reinforces this habit by glorifying constant stimulation and productivity, painting discomfort and boredom as enemies to be conquered rather than natural parts of the human experience. However, in Buddhist practice, these states are not seen as problems to be eliminated, but as fertile ground for profound growth and self-discovery. When we constantly flee from discomfort, we miss the opportunity to develop resilience and to understand the impermanent nature of all sensations, which is key to reducing suffering. Discomfort, whether physical, like sitting in an awkward posture, or emotional, like feeling anxious or sad, is a universal experience that, when met with awareness, can teach us patience, compassion, and the art of letting go. Similarly, boredom, often viewed as a void to be filled, is actually a gateway to creativity and inner peace, inviting us to turn inward and connect with our true selves beyond external stimuli. The practice of simply sitting in silence with oneself, without any distractions, is a powerful way to observe the mind's habits and to discover a peace that does not depend on changing circumstances. This does not mean we should seek out pain or avoid addressing genuine needs, but rather that we learn to be present with whatever arises without immediately reacting to push it away. For instance, when you feel bored waiting in line, instead of pulling out your phone, you might notice the impulse to escape and choose to stay with the feeling, observing your breath or the surroundings, which can reveal a richness in the ordinary. Or when facing emotional discomfort, like anxiety about an upcoming event, You could practice acknowledging the sensation without judgment, allowing it to be there while remembering that it, too, will pass. This ability to be with the full range of human experience, pleasant or not, is the foundation of inner freedom because it liberates us from the tyranny of seeking constant comfort and approval from the outside world. In Buddhism, this is tied to the understanding of anicca, or impermanence, which reminds us that all states, joy, pain, boredom, excitement, are temporary and ever-changing. By resisting discomfort, we create additional suffering, like trying to hold back a wave in the ocean, but by accepting it, we flow with the natural rhythm of life. To cultivate this tolerance, start with intentional practices in daily life. When you feel the urge to distract yourself from boredom, pause and take a few deep breaths. Curious about what arises in the mind and body, you might notice thoughts like, "This is pointless," or "I need to do something." And instead of following them, simply observe them as passing mental events. Meditation is an excellent training ground for this. Set aside time each day to sit quietly, without goals or entertainment, and notice how the mind reacts to stillness. At first, it might feel uncomfortable or frustrating, but with consistency, you will build the mental muscle to stay present with ease. Another approach is to engage in activities that naturally involve discomfort, like taking a cold shower, practicing a challenging physical pose in yoga, or having a difficult conversation without avoidance, all while maintaining mindful awareness. These experiences teach us that we can handle discomfort without falling apart, and they often lead to insights about our strengths and limitations. It is also helpful to reflect on the times when facing discomfort led to positive outcomes, such as learning a new skill through initial struggle or strengthening a relationship by working through conflict. As we practice, we begin to see that boredom is not an empty state, but a space for innovation and self-reflection. Many great ideas and artistic creations have emerged from moments of quiet tedium when the mind was free to wander and explore. Over time, reducing our intolerance to discomfort and boredom can lead to greater emotional resilience, as we become less reactive to life's ups and downs and more capable of navigating challenges with calm and clarity. Our relationships may improve because we are more present with others, not needing to escape our own unease, and we develop a deeper sense of self-awareness that guides our choices authentically. This journey requires patience and self-compassion, as old habits of avoidance are deeply ingrained. There will be days when distractions win, and that is okay. Each moment of awareness is a step forward. Celebrate small victories, like choosing to sit with boredom for 5 minutes or acknowledging discomfort without immediately seeking relief. By quietly eliminating the habit of intolerance to discomfort and boredom, we open ourselves to a more vibrant and engaged life, where every moment is valued for its teaching potential, and we find joy not in the absence of difficulty, but in our capacity to meet it with openness and curiosity. This practice naturally complements the other silent eliminations we have explored, such as letting go of envy and fear, creating a holistic path toward inner peace and fulfillment. As we continue, we might discover that what we once avoided becomes a source of strength and wisdom, and that the ability to be with ourselves, in all states, is the greatest freedom we can cultivate. After learning to sit with discomfort and embrace the quiet moments without rushing to fill them, we often become more aware of how we communicate with others and the impact our words can have, both on them and on our own inner peace. It is so easy to fall into patterns of speech that seem harmless in the moment but actually create ripples of negativity, whether it is a white lie to avoid conflict, a piece of gossip shared in confidence, a harsh comment spoken in anger, or even just idle chatter that wastes energy and distracts from what truly matters. This habit of using harmful language is something the Buddha specifically addressed as part of the Noble Eightfold Path through right speech, which involves abstaining from falsehoods, divisive talk, harsh words, and frivolous conversation, because our words carry immense karmic weight and can either heal or harm, build bridges, or burn them down. When we speak without mindfulness, we are not just exchanging information, we are shaping our reality and the realities of those around us, often reinforcing negative mental habits and creating suffering for ourselves and others. Think about a time when someone's careless remark left you feeling hurt or insecure, or when your own words, spoken in haste, led to regret and strained a relationship. These moments highlight the power language holds over our emotional well-being and social connections. In Buddhist practice, eliminating harmful speech is not about imposing strict rules on ourselves, but about cultivating a deeper awareness of our intentions and the consequences of what we say, learning to pause before speaking and asking whether our words are true, necessary, and kind. This begins with developing the art of deep listening, where we give others our full attention without interrupting or planning our response, which alone can transform interactions by making people feel valued and understood. Often, we speak out of habit, fear, or a desire to control. But when we slow down and listen first, we create space for more thoughtful and compassionate communication. For example, in a heated discussion, instead of reacting with a sharp retort, we might take a breath, listen to the other person's perspective, and respond with words that seek understanding rather than victory. This shift requires practice and patience, as our minds are conditioned to defend, impress, or fill silences. But over time, it becomes more natural to choose speech that aligns with our highest values. Right. Speech also involves recognizing when silence is the wisest choice, such as when we are tempted to spread rumors or engage in gossip that can damage reputations and trust. Gossip, in particular, is a subtle poison that often masquerades as social bonding, but it ultimately erodes the fabric of community and fuels negativity in our own minds. Similarly, lying, even with good intentions, can create a web of deception that distances us from authenticity and integrity, while harsh language, like insults or criticism, can leave emotional scars and escalate conflicts. Frivolous talk, though it might seem harmless, can clutter our minds and waste precious time that could be spent on meaningful conversations or inner reflection. By quietly eliminating these forms of harmful speech, we not only improve our relationships, but also purify our own consciousness, reducing mental agitation and creating a foundation for inner calm. The practice of right speech is deeply intertwined with other aspects of the Buddhist path, such as right mindfulness and right intention, because it requires us to be present with our thoughts and emotions and to act from a place of goodwill rather than aversion or greed. In daily life, this might mean pausing to check in with yourself before speaking in a meeting, asking, "Is what I am about to say helpful and true?" Or choosing to offer constructive feedback instead of blunt criticism when a coworker makes a mistake. It could also involve apologizing sincerely when we have spoken hurtfully, which not only repairs bonds, but also reinforces our commitment to mindful communication. Another practical aspect is to become aware of the language we use with ourselves, as negative self-talk is a form of harmful speech that can undermine our confidence and peace. Replacing inner criticism with compassionate and encouraging words is a vital part of this practice. As we cultivate right speech, we may notice that our social environments become more harmonious, because people feel safe and respected around us, and conflicts are resolved more easily through dialogue rather than defensiveness. This does not mean we avoid difficult conversations. Rather, we approach them with clarity and empathy, speaking our truth without aggression or passive aggression. The benefits extend beyond interpersonal dynamics to our own mental health, as reducing harmful speech lessens regret anxiety, and the mental clutter that comes from untruths or gossip. Over time, this practice can lead to a more authentic and empowered way of living, where our words reflect our inner values and contribute to a culture of kindness and respect. It is important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. There will be moments when we slip into old patterns, and that is okay. Each day offers new opportunities to practice. Start small by setting an intention to avoid gossip for a day or to speak only truthfully in a specific situation, and gradually expand this to more areas of your life. Mindfulness meditation can support this by helping you observe the impulses to speak without acting on them immediately, allowing you to respond rather than react. Additionally, reflecting on the karmic implications of speech can motivate change. In Buddhism, words are seen as actions that create seeds for future experiences, so using them wisely plants seeds for happiness and harmony. By embracing right speech, we align ourselves with the broader goal of reducing suffering and fostering connection, both within ourselves and in the world around us. This practice naturally flows from the previous work on tolerating discomfort, as it often requires sitting with the unease of not speaking impulsively or with the discomfort of admitting a mistake. But the rewards are profound. As we continue to eliminate harmful language, we might find that our conversations become more meaningful, our relationships deepen, and our inner world grows quieter and more peaceful, proving that the way we communicate is not just about words, but about the heart behind them. After learning to communicate more mindfully and create harmony through our words, we might still find ourselves looking outside for someone or something to provide all the answers, to rescue us from our challenges, or to grant us enlightenment without our own effort. This search for an external spiritual leader or salvation is a subtle habit that can quietly undermine our personal growth and inner peace, making us dependent on figures we perceive as having all the wisdom or power. It is a natural human tendency to want guidance, especially when we feel lost or overwhelmed. And throughout history, people have turned to gurus, masters, or saviors in the hope of finding a shortcut to happiness or spiritual awakening. However, in Buddhism, this reliance on an external source for our liberation is seen as another form of attachment that ultimately keeps us from realizing our own innate capacity for understanding and transformation. The Buddha himself emphasized this when he said, "Be a lamp unto yourself," meaning that the true path to enlightenment lies within each of us, and while teachers can point the way, we must do the walking ourselves. This does not mean that seeking guidance is wrong. Having a mentor or community can be incredibly supportive, but the problem arises when we project all our power onto someone else, expecting them to carry us across the finish line of spiritual development. When we do this, we are essentially giving away our agency and avoiding the responsibility for our own awakening, which can lead to disillusionment, dependency, and even exploitation if the leader is not ethical. Think about times when you might have idealized a teacher or a spiritual figure, believing that they held the key to your happiness, only to find that their answers did not fully resonate with your own experience, or that you felt let down when they proved to be human, with flaws and limitations. This habit of seeking salvation externally stems from a deep-seated fear and a lack of trust in our own ability to perceive truth and navigate life's complexities. It is rooted in the illusion that we are incomplete and need something outside to make us whole. But Buddhism teaches that we already possess the qualities needed for awakening: mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, and that our journey is about uncovering these, not acquiring them from elsewhere. In fact, the entire Buddhist path is designed to be empowering and personal, encouraging self-inquiry and direct experience rather than blind faith in external authorities. Teachers, books, and practices are valuable as tools and guides, but they are meant to support our own investigation, not replace it. For example, when you meditate, you are not relying on a deity or a guru to do the work for you. You are training your own mind to observe, understand, and transform itself. Similarly, when you study the Dharma, you are invited to reflect on the teachings and see if they align with your own reality, rather than accepting them uncritically. This approach fosters a sense of ownership over your spiritual life, which is crucial for genuine and lasting growth. When we silently eliminate the habit of seeking external salvation, we reclaim our inner authority and develop the confidence to trust our own insights and intuitions. This shift does not happen overnight. It requires courage and practice, especially in a culture that often promotes quick fixes and expert-driven solutions. Start by noticing when you are tempted to look outside for answers. Perhaps when facing a difficult decision, you immediately search for advice from others. Or when feeling spiritually stagnant, you hop from one teacher to another, hoping for a miracle. Bring mindfulness to these moments. Observe the underlying emotions, such as fear of making a mistake or a desire for certainty, and gently remind yourself that you have the capacity to find your own way. Meditation is a powerful practice for building this self-trust, as it helps you connect with your inner wisdom and see that clarity arises from within, not from external validation. In daily life, you can cultivate this by making small choices based on your own values and reflections, rather than always seeking approval or direction from others. For instance, if you are unsure about a career move, take time to listen to your own instincts and priorities before consulting advisors. Or if you are exploring spiritual practices, experiment with what feels authentic to you instead of blindly following a popular trend. Another helpful aspect is to study the lives of historical figures in Buddhism who emphasized self-reliance, like the Buddha, who encouraged his followers to test his teachings through their own experience rather than accept them on faith. This embodies the spirit of critical inquiry and personal responsibility that is central to the path. It is also important to recognize that dependency on a leader can sometimes lead to groupthink or loss of individuality, where you suppress your own doubts or insights to fit in, which can hinder your growth. By fostering a healthy skepticism and an open mind, you can learn from others without surrendering your autonomy. Over time, as you practice self-reliance, you may find that your sense of inner peace deepens because you are no longer buffeted by the opinions or actions of external figures, and you feel more grounded in your own truth. This does not mean you become isolated or reject community. In fact, authentic connections flourish when we relate from a place of equality and mutual respect, rather than hierarchy or dependency. Your spiritual practice becomes more vibrant and responsive because it is tailored to your unique journey, and you are better equipped to handle challenges with resilience and creativity. The benefits extend beyond spirituality to all areas of life, as you become more confident in your decisions, more compassionate toward yourself and others, and more engaged with the world in a meaningful way. Remember, this is a gradual process, and it is okay to seek guidance when needed. The key is to do so from a place of empowerment, where you see teachers as companions on the path, not as saviors. Celebrate the moments when you trust your own judgment or when you learn something profound through your own reflection. And be patient with yourself when old habits of seeking external validation resurface. By quietly eliminating the search for an external leader or salvation, you open yourself to the profound truth that the quietness and clarity you seek are already present within you, waiting to be discovered through your own sincere effort and awareness. This journey aligns with the broader Buddhist goal of ending suffering by letting go of attachments, including the attachment to external sources of authority, and it empowers you to live with greater freedom and authenticity. As you continue, you might find that life becomes a rich tapestry of learning and growth, where every experience is an opportunity to deepen your understanding and every challenge is a chance to strengthen your inner light. This final elimination brings together all the previous habits we have explored, from letting go of attachment to results to cultivating generosity and mindful speech, creating a holistic path toward a life of purpose, peace, and self-reliance. Embracing this way of being allows you to navigate the world with confidence and grace, knowing that you are the ultimate authority on your own journey, and that the salvation you seek is not in some distant figure or future event, but right here, in the present moment, within your own heart and mind.